Hey, good evening, guys. Todd Sachs of Sachs Realty. I'm the broker and founder here at Sachs Realty. We are a Maryland real estate brokerage. We help clients with both residential, commercial, and rentals, whether they're buying, selling, renting. But we help people all over the country. We have an amazing broker network all throughout the United States. So if you guys are looking for a real estate agent, good representation, just hit me up and I'll be sure to point you in the right direction. You know, I was traveling, visiting my kids about a month ago and, got home after being on the road for 10 days. And I said, there's no place like home. And I think everybody said that at least once or twice. Guys, as we have experienced what we've gone through in the last year or so with the pandemic, I think we've all really come to a new realization or just what home means to us. It has meant so much. It has been our safe haven. It has been where we have been schooling our kids. It's been where we've been working our jobs and communicating and wondering what's going on next. We're spending more time in our homes than ever before. I think it's fair to say. And I know the real estate market is crazy. Everybody's trying to buy a home. Either you own a home and you've refinanced, and guys, it's sort of like all in the news right now about how the real estate market is just going mad. And tonight we're going to talk about how to have a healthier home, things that we can do to be more sustainable, things that we can do to help the earth. And guys, I need a lot of help with that myself. I'm certainly not going to say that I'm perfect. In fact, I don't even recycle sometimes. I hate to admit, but I need to. I need to get back to being more conscious and aware. And tonight, we have the Conscious Builder all the way from Ottawa, Canada. Casey Gray is our guest tonight. He's an expert in the topic of sustainable living, healthier living, and things that we can do to just make our mark and do our part in trying to leave a better planet behind when we're gone. Guys, we're going to dive right in. So Casey, let's meet Casey Gray. Casey, thanks so much coming all the way from Canada tonight, and welcome to our Tuesday night podcast.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. This is going to be fun.
Definitely. So give everybody a little bit about you. I know you and I have similar backgrounds. We've spoken offline about how we both got in the construction business at a very early age. Take it away. Tell everybody a little bit about you.
Yeah, well, I guess if we start at that point, one thing I realized through high school is I didn't want to sit in a classroom. That just wasn't me. So luckily, when I was going through high school, they started pushing apprenticeships. And luckily, my mom was open to me doing an apprenticeship instead of going to university. And that's kind of where it began. I got into construction. Shop was my best class in school. So, I think I got 98% or something, whereas like everything else was not worth mentioning. So once I realized I was doing the apprenticeship, all my grades started to drop off because I was like, wow, why would I focus on that stuff? But anyways, after that, I did find a good company. It took me a few. I really only worked for one company for about 7 years, but it was a small renovation company. And I always tell people when they're getting into construction, if they really want to do, if that's what they want to do and they want to learn more, I always say join a small renovation crew. Somebody who does large renovations, ideally, because you'll learn more ripping apart old houses and putting them back together and adding onto them than you'll learn anywhere else. And you'll learn a lot of different skills. So then that's luckily what I ended up doing. And I worked for this one company for 7 years. It went great. They treated me well. And after that, I decided to go on my own. I was always doing side jobs and things just kind of went from there. It wasn't always the Conscious Builder though, because when I started my business when I went off, I think I was 25, 24 or something like that. I just young guy, just wanted to make money and do a good job and have some freedom, and kind of grew from there. And it wasn't until 3 years later where my wife and I started doing some personal development, went to a Tony Robbins event. My mind started to change. My thinking was changing. I started asking myself questions like, why am I doing what I'm doing? What do I want what do I want to do with my life? And then we found out not too long after doing our first Tony Robbins event that we were having our first and only son. And at that point, that's when my mind really changed. And I said, all right, if I'm going to tell this kid he can be and do whoever or whatever he wants, I need to lead by example. Because if anybody who has kids knows, they do what you do, not what you say. So I wanted to lead by example. And that's when the Conscious Builder started to come into focus and has continued to evolve since then.
You know, I don't know about Canada, but when I was in high school, and, you know, I'm older than you, as we know, we had things like wood shop and metal shop and auto mechanic shop. And I think for the most part, they stopped that here in the States, at least here in Maryland. I don't know about, I think they're bringing it back more. But, you know, gone were the days where we were teaching people to work with their hands. And it is so rewarding. I mean, you like myself, I mean, I didn't go to college. You know, I came out of school and just started working and got into construction. And, you know, I tell you, it's a great living. I mean, for people out there that are looking for alternatives to going to college, I mean, not everybody's academic. I certainly wasn't. I think like you, I did great in shop, you know, wood shop. I remember the highlight of high school was going out, and my teacher's name was Mr. Rigger. I remember, and I was a senior year in wood shop, and we did a field trip. We actually built a panelized shed in school, and then we got to take the day off. He got permission for all of us to take the day off in our class and go and build this shed on his property. So that was pretty cool, you know, and it's something that I took a lot of pride in, and, you know, really had an impact on my career. So I hope that we can get back into that. So tell us about, you know, why the Conscious Builder. And tonight, guys, we're going to talk. And if you have questions for Casey, go ahead and comment those questions if you're watching live, and we'll be sure to try and answer those tonight. If you're watching this recorded, go ahead and, you know, comment your questions, and we'll still get back to you and make sure that we at least point you in the right direction. Casey knows this stuff inside and out. And we're going to talk about not just, you know, energy efficiency tonight. You know, a lot of people think of, you know, green living or being sustainable as being as much off of the grid as you can possibly be. Though that is included, you know, solar, geothermal, wind, different technologies. We're going to talk about a lot tonight as it relates to your existing home, things that you can do to really retrofit and make it a healthier place to live while you're doing your part. Basically, by making a healthier place to live, you'll be making a healthier planet too. We're going to tell you about some products, and later on in the show, we're going to pull some products up for you to check out and take a look at. And, you know, so, you know, hang in there with us. You know, if we're talking about something that doesn't interest you, I promise you, we are going to get to something that you can relate with and something that interests you. And like I said, I have not been a model citizen at, you know, taking the planet as serious as I should, as far as doing the right thing all the time. And I want to be more aware as well. So me, like you, I'm a student tonight, checking Casey out. So Casey, why did you start the Conscious Builder? I know that you wanted to leave a better footprint, but what was really pushing you in that direction?
Well, like I was saying before, it was definitely the mindset was changing, right? And the word conscious really stuck because I think a lot of people not knowing it go through life kind of unconscious. They make decisions like, I don't want to put anybody down. I was there too, and I still do things that are unconscious, right? We have these habits, and we can't change these habits. We can't start to recycle, for example, as a baby step, until we're aware of the fact that we have that habit, right? That's the first step to any change, is the awareness. So once you're aware of what it is that you need to change or what it is that you need to do, then you can start creating an action plan to figure out how to change that. And that's where the word conscious. So to me, the conscious builder really stands for bringing that awareness to the world, right? To anybody. In our case, if we're working with individuals, it'll be to that client for their home, bringing them the information they need so that they can make a conscious decision. Because at the end of the day, we're not building homes and selling them. We're doing custom, right? For most of our projects, we were talking before, we came live about doing some of our own projects where we buy and hold, and we'll be able to lead by example on that front as well. But at the end of the day, the people who are hiring us are thinking differently, and they're coming to us because they want that extra help, right? So that's what the conscious builder really stood for, is just bringing that awareness so that we can make conscious decisions and we can take conscious action.
So most of our audience lives in an existing home, right? They're not building something sort of from ground up. What are the main concerns that we're facing with our homes today?
Well, I guess for existing homes, it's going to be air quality for sure. But keep in mind, the existing home is sometimes the most, the greenest home to some extent, right? It's already there, it's existing. If you can work with a lot of it, that can be the most sustainable route to go, right? So keep that in mind. If, you don't have to build a brand new, we'll get into passive house, net zero, all sorts of stuff later. You don't have to build a brand new home. We need to work with what's existing. So I guess the biggest issue that we run into older houses, at least here, would be indoor air quality. So there could be mold somewhere, or maybe somebody added insulation or added a vapor barrier in the wrong place, and air barriers. So people don't understand the difference between vapor barrier and air barriers and weather barrier, and how things can work. You need those three, but they can kind of be one thing in some extent. So I don't know. I don't know how much detail you want to get into, but it's a lot of building science over the years. Even since I started, I've been doing this 17 years at this point. The stuff I learned at the beginning is different than what I do now. And it's not that, when I say I didn't want to go to university or something, I never stopped learning. Like, I'm a student every single day. I just learn by actually doing that. I just know that about myself. I prefer to go out there and get my hands dirty and learn that way, start a business and lose lots of money, learn that way, as opposed to going to business school sort of thing, right? They don't teach you business in carpentry school, but I heard they don't teach you business in business school either. So I don't know, but
it's true.
So yeah, I think it's really about understanding building science. And if you are going to start working and trying to improve your home, you need to understand that, or hire a team who does understand or can guide you in the right way, because you can actually create sick homes, right? If you don't do things properly, you can create a more toxic environment for yourself and your family.
So one of the things that we talk about is now the houses today, they want so airtight. And I guess the biggest myth that people have is they feel that that's bad. Why would I seal up my home and prevent fresh air from entering? And maybe by doing that, sealing it up, that makes me even more vulnerable to the toxins. I mean, can you kind of explain? And, I know you kind of relate it to like this, our skin, right? So, kind of talk about what the difference is between fresh air coming in and controlled air in our homes.
Yeah. So I love this question because I get it a lot, obviously. So I've had to talk about this a lot, but you want to think of your home as your body, right? When you breathe, you don't breathe through your skin. You perspire through your skin, right? But you're not breathing. To get the oxygen, you breathe through your nose, through your mouth. Your nose, ideally, it filters the air and it goes into your lungs. And then you breathe in good stuff, you get rid of the bad stuff, right? That's what we want. So we don't want air to travel through our skin, through the walls in our house. We want air to be controlled and get preconditioned as it comes into our house. So the idea is that, yes, you do want your house to be as airtight as possible, but you want your wall to be able to perspire, right? So you want vapor to be able to travel through the wall if need be. And then you want to install lungs for your home, or an ERV or HRV. So HRV is heat recovery ventilator. ERV you might hear is energy recovery ventilator. It actually stands for enthalpy recovery ventilator. Enthalpy is transfer of moisture. So depending on where you live, one or the other might be better. If you have here where we live in Ottawa, we have humid summers and cold, dry winters. So ERVs are actually better. Some HVAC guys will argue with me on that, and they used to be right, but because ERVs are better now, the cores don't freeze anymore. So they're actually better in our environment. But the idea is that air comes in through the system. So we call it a fresh air system. EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, calls it a fresh air system. Essentially, the air comes into the system at the same rate that air is leaving the house, so also going through the system, and then the air crosses, but it doesn't mix. So it goes through a core, and it has coils where it can precondition the air. So if it's like minus 20 out, well, I'm talking Celsius. I don't know what it is in Fahrenheit, but so if it's freezing outside and you have it set at 72 degrees inside, that air that's leaving the house will precondition the air that's coming into the house before it gets distributed. It's not going to be 100%. It's not going to heat the home, right? But it's going to precondition it. And that's way better than, for example, if you need to ventilate your house and you turn on your range hood or your bathroom fan, what happens is that air is sucking out of your house, but it has to come in somewhere. So where is that air coming in? It's coming in through all the leaky holes. It's bringing in all the pollutants through your walls. Plus, if it's freezing cold outside, it's bringing in cold air and it's not preconditioning it. So essentially, you are putting a higher load onto your heating system as well. And it's actually, we have a blog post that was done quite a few years ago on our page, but there's a calculation which is done, which shows that if it's minus 25 degrees Celsius outside and it's plus 20 inside, and you turn on 1,000 CFM range hood, you actually lose almost 90,000 BTUs per hour.
Wow. Yeah. So air quality, when we're talking about it, it really isn't so much the air coming in from the outside everywhere. It's controlling where the air comes from, filtering that air and circulating the air and then getting it out of the house. So, a lot of people think when they think about efficiency and a house being sealed up. And by the way, I mean, I don't know about Canada, but here, if you're building a new home, you have to have a blower door test. It's called a blower door test. And one of the things that they're doing is testing to make sure that your home is sealed up. So that's one of the requirements. And, guys, if you're in an older home and, or a home that has bad windows or doors, I mean, a lot of times when you're having a storm outside, you can actually feel it blowing the air actually through. It seems like it's coming from the walls, especially around your outlets, switching, stuff like that. So one of the things that in order to enhance the air quality, you really have to work on sealing up the home so that you can control the air quality because it's almost impossible to do when your house is leaky. What can they do, Casey? So, I mean, they can start by hiring an expert energy modeler, right? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so it's great to hear that your blower door tests are required there. They talk about them here. They're not required here yet. We have a pretty good building code, but what I always tell people too is that if you're going to build a home or renovate a home to the building code, just keep in mind that is the worst house that you're allowed to build by law. It's what it is, right? So if you want to, I'm not saying structurally, like obviously you want to make sure you do everything structurally. You don't need to go overboard on structure. However, you can increase the amount of insulation and improve the air sealing details as you're renovating a home and end up with a more comfortable home. And by default, you end up with a more efficient home. So I guess what can you do? It really depends on what you're willing to spend, right? If you're going to do a major renovation, then I would say do it right. The things that are in the wall are more expensive to change later. It's easy to change the siding, the flooring, the kitchen, like those. That's all the makeup, right? That's the pretty makeup stuff that's easy to do at any point. So if you're going to redo a renovation, if you're going to rip a wall apart, put it back together better than what it was before. Seal up those details, but you might need to have a bigger plan, right? If you only tackle your project and you plan one part of it at a time, you're going to miss things. So if you know you're going to do everything, if you know you're going to change your windows and you're going to change your siding and you're going to be ripping walls apart, like I would always plan everything so that you can phase your project appropriately. And you never want to start with like your HVAC system, for example, because if you do plan on improving the envelope of your home, your HVAC system will be oversized by the time you're done, right? Sometimes it's the lowest hanging fruit, especially when there's all these government grants out there and they say change your furnace or upgrade your AC or whatever it may be, and we'll give you money back. And people say, oh, great, I get to do it. And then a lot of those guys don't even size it properly. So you end up with a system that's too big for your house as it is today, and you actually end up changing your windows, and then it just gets worse and worse. The other thing I would do is if you are going to change your windows, do a triple glazed. You can get really cost effective windows, triple glazed, that perform way better than double glazed. And it's only going to cost you like maybe 15-20% more.
Yeah. When you were saying about size, we want to think that, you get a bigger size HVAC, heating, an air conditioning unit or system in your house. And that's not what you want. I mean, you want it to be perfectly sized. So, if you're thinking about doing home renovations and you really want to make your home a healthier place, you need to seal it up. So that's one of the big things that you need to do. And part of that, and what I recommend, and Casey, I know you as well, I've heard you say it, hire an expert. There are companies out there, I know here in Maryland, and I know all over North America, actually, there are companies that will come out and, they're called energy modelers. That's what they do for a living. So they'll come out, they'll do an assessment of your home. They'll do a blower door test to find out, how leaky your house actually is, combustion testing. And some of them even do like an infrared analysis. And it's a great place to start because like Casey's saying, making sure that you're doing the things right in the right steps. And if you're re-siding your house too, you can do it from the outside, a lot of this. So if you're replacing windows and that siding is something that you want to do, you can even add insulation value from the exterior of your house, seal it up, make sure you're sealing those, taping those windows up, and, where the space where they meet the wood framing and, and really prevent the air from coming in.
That's actually the best place to do it.
Outside.
People, by the way. If they're going to redo your siding, to me, it's a waste of money if you don't add insulation and make your home more airtight. Like you can do like a peel and stick membrane and then put insulation on top of that. And then, it depends on the insulation. You can even use, if it's foam insulation, you can put that on and tape the joints. That could be your weather barrier and your air barrier. And if you do enough of it, it could technically be your vapor barrier too. But then you get into building, you need to make sure that it's, that you add enough insulation for it to do that.
And here in Maryland, a lot of times, depending on the size of the renovation, they will make you upgrade your existing home to meet the new energy codes. And right now, I mean, we're R-20 on the walls and R-49 in the attics. And for a lot of you guys, I know that doesn't mean anything, but if you just think about home construction used to be made out of 2x4s exterior walls. That no longer meets the energy codes. Today, you actually have to build in 2x6 walls. So, and when they're milled down, it's a little smaller than that, but that is important to know. So a lot of times, if you're doing a major renovation, if they are making you, the county or wherever you're renovating, they may require you to upgrade. And sometimes a lot of the easiest way to do that is to redo the exterior of your house to get that extra layer, like Casey just said, of insulation versus ripping out every stitch of plaster or drywall in the inside and then adding furring strips on your existing 2x4s in order to get the insulation, because you can't mash it in. You actually have to make those walls thicker. So where do the air toxins come from? I mean, what are the biggest, suppliers of that? VOCs. Can you tell people what are VOCs and where they come from?
Volatile organic compounds. So they're basically everywhere. They are naturally, like, they happen naturally, right? So it's just that some of them are worse for you than others, right? And there's chemicals that are going to be worse for you than others. So I can't say I'm an expert in VOCs, but you can, whenever you're going to purchase a product, you're going to want to get a low VOC or no VOC product, or paint, for example. That it talks a lot about it in paint and finishes. It's really the off gassing, right? So everything we buy really off gases. That new car smell, that's VOCs. That's off gassing of the plastics in the car, right? That's not good for us. So ideally, that's where the ventilation, you have your house, it's airtight and you ventilate it all the time. Eventually those VOCs should wear out if you did have any, and you can get rid of those. I think there's drywall out there. Actually, I think you're going to bring up that product later that's supposed to absorb some of that. I don't know how well it works or if it's true or not. No idea, right? We're kind of going based on what they're telling us for that product. But the other thing I recommend, like if somebody's going to rip apart their house, like some things aren't harmful to you until you disturb them, like asbestos, right? So before we do any demolition of any home, we always get what's called a DSR or a DSS, designated substance report or designated substance survey. I don't know what, I think people use that term interchangeably, but we get it tested for lead and anything that could harm the people who are going to be working in the home or living in the home. And then if usually we find asbestos or lead or something, then we have to get rid of that. Asbestos alone, if it's not airborne, is fine. It's not going to harm you. But as soon as it's airborne, then it will harm you, right? So as an example of something that's fine, undisturbed, but not good for you, will cause cancer if you disturb it.
You know, I forget, I think it was on Facebook or somewhere, someone was circulating some of the old advertisements and asbestos was one of them. And, you know, how they thought that this was like this was like an amazing product, right? And little do we know, years later, it's not very amazing at all. It's actually very harmful. But yeah, I mean, certainly there are things that you can do inside your home. Also, I mean, potted plants are a great way to absorb some of these toxins and, get some fresh oxygen going. So air purifiers.
That's a good point. I think mother-in-law's tongue is one of the plants that actually cleans the air. It's good for, like, you put in your bedroom. My wife has like 6 of them. Yeah.
Definitely. And, air purifiers, I mean, certainly, they do great, great work too. So let's talk about, what does it mean when we have more comfort in our home? I mean, it's a happier space. We have more mental health issues than we have ever had, I think, with everybody being kind of isolated and locked up. I mean, when you can tell when a house doesn't smell good, right? When it just doesn't feel good, especially when it gets hot. I can walk into a house that, like a rancher where the sun is beating down on the roof and you can just kind of smell the toxins, the building products kind of melting. So, sometimes it takes stepping into somebody else's house to identify it because you get so used to it. But we know that, better air quality is a healthier, happier space. It's better for your mental health. And there's a lot of things that we can do when we're renovating. So let's kind of jump into energy efficiency. People think energy efficiency, I'm going to put solar panels on my roof or, go geothermal, and I'm never going to have an electric bill, and I'm going to save an amazing amount of money in perpetuity. And the fact of the matter is these things can be expensive. So, But let's talk about some of the benefits. And, it was weird. I was talking with, everybody wonders about the grid. We saw what happened in the pandemic and, how in 2 weeks of COVID, the shelves were empty and trying to get rolls of toilet paper and paper towels and things like that. And, then you think about, well, geez, what would happen if we got knocked off the grid, by some attack or something happening? And you think, well, gee, if my house was just self-sufficient, if I had my own water supply, if I could have my own electric supply, and you start thinking, geez, that's not a bad way to think. But, then once I calm down, I know that there's a lot of benefit to having these energy efficient systems in the house. So just kind of go over those and talk about some of the things that we can do to improve the energy efficiency.
Yeah, I think I'll talk a little bit on the grid thing, just because that comes up a lot in conversations. It depends on where you live, but it's really hard to be off grid where we live and live comfortably, right? So I think true sustainability comes from when you don't feel like you're sacrificing, right? If you like long showers and you have to sacrifice those, then it's probably not going to be sustainable, right? So just plan for that, right? Just make decisions that will reduce your energy consumption or be more efficient, right? But you don't want to, we get used to certain things, right? And I think that we have amazing technology. Why not use it, right? But why not just do it a little bit better? That's all I'm saying. So I think on the grid side, I think grid often makes sense because everybody uses a different amounts of energy. But I think where we're likely going to go in the near future is you're going to have communities that are on their own grids, right? So instead of having one grid to power thousands and thousands of houses, maybe you have like these mini power plants, solar panels, whatever they may be, that generate the electricity and the power that you need for that community, the people that live. So it becomes more of a shared community. And the tough part, if every house goes on their own, then fantastic. Where it gets tough is that you really need to watch your electricity. So the grid has to overproduce, but that would be same for your house, right? So you need to store enough energy for the worst possible time. For us, it's in the middle of the dead of the winter, right? We don't get as much sun, and we have to use a lot of heat. So our biggest loads are on hot water and heating. Yes, we have cooling too, but we don't cool as much as we heat, right? So it's really on the heating of the hot water and the heating of our home. So when it comes to comfort, though, the idea and why we built a passive house, we didn't get into that yet, but if you can make your home more comfortable, you will be more efficient. You will use less energy to heat your home if you have less air leakage. So if you focus on making your home airtight and you put in good quality windows, your house will just feel more comfortable. So you won't need to put as much heat into the home or as much cooling into the home in the summer. And I think that's where we can make the biggest difference is you focus on the envelope first when you can. If you're renovating, you're going to have to do some other things. And it's going to be phased approach. And then by default, you end up with a more comfortable home. If you sit in front of it, I don't know what your winters are like there, but if you ever sat in front of a window and it feels like we used to have a window behind our house, one of the houses we lived in, and the couch was in front of it. So you could it felt like air, right? Especially like I got no hair. So I could feel it, right? So, but it wasn't that the window was leaking. It was that the window just performed so poorly that the cold air would meet the warm air and it would create a convection current. And that's what you feel. But triple glazed windows don't do that because they perform better. So you don't have that cold outside air meeting the hot indoor air and you don't get that convection current. Those are things that improve the comfort. So now all of a sudden you don't need to turn the fireplace on that's beside your couch because you just feel warmer. So now we're using less electricity less natural gas in that case.
Yeah, and you can do the couch test, so you can feel the couch, and if the couch is as cold as it is outside, right? You have a leaky window.
Yeah.
So, do you guys put much emphasis on energy efficient appliances?
Yeah, those are kind of, we don't usually supply the appliances; those are kind of default. But all the homes, like since I started the business, going on 11 years now. We've only ever built 2 homes with natural gas. Every single home has been fossil fuel free other than that. And the only reason that those 2 homes went with natural gas is because they wanted radiant heat in their floors, right? Which is a really nice feature, especially here. But it's hard to do with electricity. It's expensive because we pay a lot for electricity where we live in comparison to natural gas. So the appliances become important because everyone's just looking to keep their electricity bill down. So they end up just looking for Energy Star appliances or something anyways. But it's usually not, it's kind of what we're used to doing now. It's just become the norm. What I think people don't realize use a lot of electricity is like their smart TVs, their PVRs, like those use a astronomical amount of electricity. Like if you're recording shows all the time, I don't know if people record shows. I don't really have cable. I just use Netflix or something, right? But anything that's running, like your modem, you're downloading stuff. People, I don't know if you're into cryptocurrency, for example, like the computing power, like people like mine Bitcoin, that uses a ton of electricity, right? So people that mine Bitcoin have to use it where electricity is cheap, but that's just computing power, right? So we're plugging more and more things into our homes, and more things are just, our plug load is increasing. So what's happening is that our heating and cooling load is decreasing. Hot water usually stays about the same, depending on how many people you got living in the house. But then our plug loads are increasing, right? So that's not really our appliances. It's the fact that we got 5 people in our house and everybody's got an iPad and a phone and a laptop and they're charging all the time. Those are the things that end up using a lot of our electricity.
So we think we're being green with making all those changes in our house, and then we just burn it all up with our smart devices.
Yeah, pretty much. And that's, once again, I don't think we need to change that. I think we need to adapt because that is the way of life. We are doing it right now, right? We are having a conversation. That's just the way life is now. So I think maybe it's like you can get a solar panel and a little battery bank that charges your appliance or charges your phones and stuff, right? Those are readily available, that are cheap and, an easy way to reduce the energy consumption.
You let your phone get down to 1 bar, man, and you are like, you're frantic. You're looking for a place to plug in, right?
Yeah.
You're talking about hot water. You guys having issues with water heaters there?
Issues?
We can't find them. You got any? We can ship them to us?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. Because we're not building hundreds of houses, I'm not sure where they're at.
Well, hopefully your water heater won't go up, because here, Casey, we're having a major problem. We're thinking about energy efficiency of not having hot water. We're thinking about, what are we going to do?
Is that all hot water?
Well, water heaters, we're just in a shortage right now. So, it's amazing. And, how long is it going to last? But we're thinking, we sell a house that needs a water heater, and we go, well, it has a bathtub and, the range works. So you could always, like the old days, heat your bath water. I remember that when I was a kid too. I hate to say it, but, sometimes my mom boiled water. Mom, if you're listening, my mom boiled water to give me a bath, and sometimes it was way too hot and other times it was still cold. But anyway, hopefully we're not going to go to that extreme here in the US, but I know we are definitely having some shortages on building supplies. So let's talk about your building of your certified passive houses. What is that? And, I know you've built a couple of these things. So what's a certified passive house?
Yeah. So passive house is one of the most rigorous building standards in the world. There's 2. So there's Passive House US and there's Passive House International. And it's not to be confused with a passive solar house. A passive solar house is very different than a certified passive house. Really, the idea behind a certified passive house is really focuses on the heating and cooling load of the home. And it looks like any other home, like what you're looking at pictures right now. That was the first passive home that we built and sold. And the only difference is, in terms of aesthetics, is that our walls are really thick. So our windowsills were, 19 inches deep. So we could have flowers all over our windowsills. You can see there on the left picture. That was the only way you could tell that it was a passive house. And the fact that when you walked into the house, it smelled like fresh wood. I actually left the house for about a month and went to Florida and came back, and it actually smelled like fresh wood, not like the house that was empty for a week, right? That you were describing, because nobody had been living there and the sun was beating down on it or whatever it may be. Because we always had fresh air coming into that. So the passive house really focuses on the envelope itself and making sure that it's as airtight as possible. And it becomes passive because you're kind of, to some extent, heating it yes, if you can get the right orientation, you can use the sun, but I don't like to rely on the sun, because what we realize is that the sun's on or off, like you can't control it, right? So if you're relying on the sun, you might get too much, right? So unless you're going to have shutters on the outside to block it when you don't need it, it was really in the winter months, right, when the sun was lower. We had overhangs to block it in the summer, so there's no issues there. But it was in the winter months, it could get really hot in there if the sun was out all day, even if it was minus 25, minus 30 degrees outside. So focus on the envelope, add a ton of insulation. Is modeled based on the lot and the shading and so forth. So it depends. That one was our 73.5, which is extreme. But it was on the lower end compared to the one passive home we did, which was in our 92, I believe. But it was didn't have the best orientation. It was in the city. It had shading. There's a big tree blocking it, right? So those are all things that get factored into there. The difference between Passive House International and US, I think there are some differences. So I think Passive House International is a little bit harder than Passive House US to achieve. But really, it's going to be dependent on where you live too. It's really easy to build a passive house in California because they don't have the extreme difference in temperature, right? So once again, it'd be something you'd be working with an energy modeler on, and you'd definitely be doing an integrated design process where you have like your builder, your architect, your energy modeler, and the homeowner all working together.
Let's pull that picture back up again. So the one with so Casey, one of the interesting things, we're talking about sealing up a home to make it airtight, and focusing on insulation, and then we're looking at really floor to ceiling. And guys, if you're listening through audio, you can always check this podcast out on Sachs Realty's YouTube channel. But what we're looking here is at this passive house that Casey built, and we're looking at really floor to ceiling windows. I mean, that window wall, it's a wall of windows. How are you? Is that just basically on triple glazed glass? Is it really that efficient?
Yeah. So in this case, it's a little bit different because we got into different glass depending on which orientation. So all those windows are facing south. What you can't see in this picture is that there's an overhang. That's why the windows don't go, there's a break between them. We have a roof there that blocks the sun in the warmer months and lets it in. When the sun drops in the colder months, it lets the sun in. Those windows were triple glazed with super spacers and had krypton gas. Actually, sorry, no, those had argon. Krypton were on the other sides. So if you're relying on the sun, what you're going to need for your window is what's called a solar heat gain coefficient. So the higher that number is, the more UV, the more sun that will come into the home. However, when you have a higher solar heat gain coefficient, your window actually performs worse. So you don't get the same U value, which is R value, and when you're talking walls. So you don't get the same performance if it was just cold out, right? So you have to be conscious of that. The one thing, like when you stood beside these windows in the dead of the winter at night, you couldn't feel anything. Like it's still the weakest point of the house, but you didn't feel like that convection current I was talking about. It was the weakest point is like the door, right? If its seal doesn't work well or something like that. But everything else was completely sealed up. We hit 0.36. Oh, sorry, no, that wasn't this house. I think we were 0.46 ACH on this house.
Yeah, that's really nice photo and beautiful. I mean, I like how the outside's in, and I mean, it really looks nice. Have you heard of smart glass?
I have not.
So, I was doing some research, and they have this, and guys, you can go to Google and check it out, but it's actually this new technology and they're using it in commercial buildings a lot, where the energy code, believe it or not, is even more strict than residential. But it actually changes to the temperature to allow, more light in the colder months, and then really block the UV rays in the heat or the hot months. And then they also have this smart glass that actually you don't even need blinds or shades So it's amazing. You guys have to check it out.
Solar like automatically tint.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah, that's great. So those are, I guess it would be similar to like somebody's glasses who tint in the sunlight. So the only thing is, I guess you have to be aware of how that affects the light coming into your home, right? If it's automatic. So these are all things that you need to think about. Is there's usually a lot of great ideas, but you need to make sure that it doesn't affect something else. Right. So the one great thing that we had, we oriented that house perfectly south, and we were like, yeah, we'll use the sun and we'll let it in the winter. But we literally there'd be a few days out of the year, we'd be like cooking ourselves, even though it was freezing outside, because it was like a beautiful sunny day, but it was really cold. But now with like I said, we couldn't turn the sun off, and we didn't want to put blinds up because then we'd be blocking the daylight. Right. So those are things that one of the biggest lessons that I learned about that is that I no longer rely on the sun for heat. If you can take advantage of it sometimes, then great. But I would be more looking at a good orientation to maximize the solar generation, like with the solar panels, the electricity generation.
So we're going to get into showing some sample products, guys. If you have any questions, so go ahead. Now's your opportunity. Kevin Bond commented, said true no vocational skills are taught, and suggested, I think he was referring to when we were talking about high school and teaching trades. And certainly I'm not saying don't go to college. Simply that is a great path and an essential path. If you're not, if you're going into a field that requires it, or we're getting a job, they won't consider you without those degrees. But, being in the trades is very rewarding if you like to work with your hands. So, really recommend for some people to check it out. I mean, we need more people in the building industry, more skilled tradesmen. You can make a lot of money. We got a hello from Houston, Texas. We thank you for checking us out and watching our podcast. We're going to publish all of our information in the show notes. You'll be able to look up Casey, all of his links, as well as we're going to dive into some products here. And any of those products we will also put in the show notes that you can click. We got Dan Ryder. Dan is a client and he's a builder. He's a great builder, actually. He does a super job. I've represented him for several years on his product. And I know he's getting into doing more energy efficient stuff here locally in Maryland. What's your opinion on ICF wall houses, Casey?
So ICF, I think, has its place for sure. So for anybody who doesn't know what ICF, it's an insulated concrete form. And what it is that you, for the most part, it's going to be almost a Lego block, right? That's hollow. And then there's a bunch of different manufacturers that do it, and they're all a little bit different on how they go together. But you have foam and foam on either side, and you pour concrete in the middle of that. And that would be your foundation, your structure, your insulation. And you can actually add more foam to it if you need more foam. One of the certified passive foams that we built here in Ottawa was actually complete ICF, 3 stories up. It was kind of a test because it was with another architect that we work with. We weren't sure if it would be cheaper than wood or not. These days, maybe it is. But I can tell you that house is solid and it's bomb proof. And when a dump truck, he's close to the road. When a dump truck drives by, you can't even hear that thing. So that's a benefit to it. The downside to ICF, at least your typical ICF, is the carbon footprint. Foam and concrete are huge contributors to emissions in the environment, right? To adding to our carbon footprint. So wood is something that is almost like sequestering carbon, where a tree grows, it takes in all the carbon dioxide, you cut it down, as long as you don't burn it, it'll slowly release stuff, but then you kind of build your house with it. ICF, unfortunately, there's a lot of carbon that gets released into the environment when you're producing those products. So that is the downside. Now, that being said, there is a product called NextChem. They're not our sponsor. We're not paying us to call them out, but NextChem is actually an ICF product that's more than the foam, but it's made from wood fiberboard. It's wood mixed with like an aggregate of some sort. So it doesn't have the foam. So your carbon footprint when you use a product like that significantly reduces. I haven't used it yet, watch videos. I'm really interested in using it. I'm hoping that we can on a project. We're looking for a lot to build our own home again. I'm considering, I'll definitely be looking into that product for our home, even if it's just for the foundation. That's fine, but maybe it ends up being more than just the foundation. Maybe it ends up being our exterior walls. The only thing is, once again, products like that are usually being shipped from overseas. So it's kind of like choose your poison. That this is all the things that we need to think about when we're renovating, when we're building. There's never, I don't think that there's a best way to do anything. It's what is the best way for you and your project.
Excellent. We thank you, Dan, for asking that question. Part of renovations, we'll show you some of these products, but if you're renovating, part of, I was on the EPA website. They actually did a study and they have a couple fact sheets about, in 2018, 600 million tons of construction and demolition waste, known as C&D waste, was generated in the United States. And most of this ends up in our landfills. So one of the things, that I kind of wanted to put out there is, things that we can do to be a little bit more responsible or conscious of what we're doing with the waste, because a lot of this stuff can be recycled. And, as somebody that's rehabbed a lot of houses, I can tell you, I haven't always considered that. We bring the dumpsters to the job site, we throw everything in the dumpster, and off it goes to the landfill. But there is a lot of recycling and salvaging that you can do with the products when you're getting into your renovation products, and a lot of reuse, and really maximizing the recovery of these materials. We can conserve a lot of forest by doing that as well, and avoid a lot of the landfills. The issues that we're having with the landfills with a lot of these products that really don't disintegrate very quickly. Some examples of some products that we can reuse: doors, hardware, fixtures, even your wood scraps. I mean, a lot of times if you're doing construction projects, you can use those wood scraps as blocking. And you can depaper like drywall and things like that as gypsum. It actually go good in the garden. So you can, crush it up and till it in as a soil amendment. And then paint, a lot of times people will throw away old paint. You can remix old paint as long as you don't let it freeze. I think that's probably the biggest problem with paint. You put it in a garage that's not conditioned, and you have those 4 or 5 gallons that are hanging out, and you decide that you want to repaint. You can remix those paints to be a different color, and you can use them as primers too. So if you have walls that you need to prime, just try and be, conscientious to that. And then certainly with the appliances, you can donate them. There are a lot of, nonprofits out there, a lot of people that are less fortunate, or some of these appliances can kind of be refurbished and sold. And a lot of these nonprofits use those proceeds for the good. So, but yeah, let's talk about insulation. I think insulation, there's a lot of, we talk about toxins in the air toxins, when the air is just kind of coming through, some of that insulation becomes more of a VOC hazard, right? A toxin.
Yeah, the biggest thing is that the fire retardants that are used in insulation, but also potentially, depending on the edge of the house and how the walls are built, there could be mold in that insulation too. So there is a lot of different types of insulation. The most common one is fiberglass, right? Everybody sees fiberglass. The downside to fiberglass is the fact that when it gets wet, it's useless. So as soon as it gets wet, it's no good. Mold will grow on it. But also the fire retardants that they have to add to it in order to keep it safe, right? So we don't use that very often. It's the cheapest way, but we try to avoid that or convince clients not to use that. What we tend to use a lot of, because in terms of labor, it's the same as fiberglass, but the product is about 20, 25% more. It's rock wool. And The great thing about rock wool is that, yes, it's not necessarily a renewable resource. It's made from rock and slag and the recycled slag. However, you don't need to add extra fire retardants to it. And if it gets wet, it can dry and mold doesn't grow on it because it's rock, right? So it's naturally getting rid of that. So it's a great product to use. Another great product would be cellulose. You probably use it in the attics there. We use it here. That's recycled newspaper. So yes, they have to add fire retardants to that, but it's still recycled. If you're putting it on the other side of the air barrier, then you're fine. There's also, you can use cellulose and do dense pack cellulose. So if you have a wall cavity, you can get a company that'll actually come and blow it into that wall cavity until it packs to a certain density. And then it'll actually, so you get more R value out of it instead of a loose fill cellulose like what you would see in your attic. And then there's the Havelock makes the wool insulation. We haven't used that yet. Once again, it's a little bit more expensive. And then we
got a picture of that up here, Casey, the Havelock wool, straight off of their havelockwool.com website. Some lamb wool, right?
Yeah. So we haven't used that yet, but then a lot of these products also make a rigid, like Rockwool makes a rigid board that you can use for exterior continuous insulation. So the great thing, I'm a big proponent, like you need to put exterior insulation on because what that does is it gets rid of the thermal bridges, right? So when you do those thermal imaging cameras, and when your energy advisor comes and maybe does the blower door test and checks all that, you can see all of your studs in your wall. But if you add exterior insulation, you get rid of that thermal bridge and you won't have, it adds to the comfort of your home, right? It's more, it's an actual effective R value. So if you have an R4 comfort board, which is Rockwool's product on the outside, it's actually an effective R4, right? Whereas if you put your R22 bat in the stud space, it's not really an effective R22. It's more like an R17 because you lose the insulation from every single stud. So it'll give you an idea of where you get best bang for your buck, so to speak. And then obviously there's like EPS, which is extruded polystyrene, XPS, which is expanded polystyrene, which is all the foam products that you'll see. And there's also wood fiber board, which is more expensive, usually coming from Europe. But that's a really good sustainable product. Can also be air barrier, weather barrier on the exterior of your home as well. So I think I covered most of them, but
you sure did.
Lots of options out there.
And by insulating exterior, you're not going to feel that cold air blowing in around those electrical outlets and light switches that are on your exterior walls.
Absolutely.
Because you're right. I mean, it's certainly, the 2x4s or the 2x6 walls are actually, destroying your R value.
Yeah. And that'll depend on where you put your air barrier too, right? So
yep.
If you can put your air barrier on the outside, then if your vapor barrier is now no longer your air barrier, wherever your plugs are, those technically won't be air leakages at every single plug, right? Because you've already taken care of the air barrier somewhere on another plane of the wall.
Yeah, and you're right. And that wool is naturally a fire retardant. I know we've done a lot with multifamily housing, and that rock wool we actually have to put in between the floor, layers, and some of when we're doing these existing wood frame, houses where you've got an apartment upstairs, apartment downstairs. We've actually had to use that as a fire separation with double H firewall, drywall to get that, fire separation. What do you think about bamboo products? They say that bamboo's harvested up to every 3 years, and you can reduce the amount of forest that we're leveling that takes 20, 25 years to grow back.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Like bamboo grows fast. Same with like cork, right? I've heard that of cork is made from bark. I can't say that I've done a lot of research and know what's true and what's not on that. But sustainable forestry, if it's done properly, is not necessarily a bad thing. Because like I said, it's kind of sequestering carbon, right? You let the trees grow, it sucks in all the carbon dioxide that we're putting out into the air, and then you turn that into a house, and then the process starts again, right? So it's kind of it's a cycle that continues. So that's not necessarily a bad thing if it's done properly. Bamboo, it's not being grown here, right? It's coming from overseas. So that would be my only thought on that. The other thing is that most of the flooring these days is only it's an engineered floor. So you have a thin layer of bamboo, right? Or you have a thin layer of hardwood and then it's plywood underneath. That plywood is all recycled wood a lot of the time anyways, or it's a veneer, right? So it makes for a better product in terms of how it interacts with the humidity in our homes. So, it's always do your own research, do what you feel is best. Be careful where some of the products are coming from and what they're saying in terms of the finish that they're being used on it too. We have a great company here in Ottawa called Logs End Flooring. You guys, I'm sure you can order. Just because they're in Ottawa doesn't mean you can't order from them. They pull logs out of the Ottawa River. So the Ottawa River used to be used as for logging, right? They would send all the logs down there. A lot of them sank. They pull them out of the Ottawa River and turn them into reclaimed hardwood floors. But it's engineered so they get more out of it too. But it's actually better. So you can get like pine, oak, all sorts of different things. Amazing company. That would be something that I would do here in Ottawa, right? So even you're not that far, that might be a better option than bamboo that's coming from overseas.
Yeah,
right.
We'll definitely put some links in the
Yeah, if you can find somebody locally or somewhat locally that doesn't have to go overseas, and I think that's always a better option.
And guys, none of these are sponsoring our show. We're just pulling this stuff right off their website and doing research to bring you great information. Tesla has this new solar roof too. Casey, have you heard of this before?
Yeah, we've been looking into it for a few years. We haven't been able to use it yet. We were going to use it on a project. I don't know if they're even in Canada yet, to be honest, or at least where we are. I think solar shingles, it's a great option.
It's pretty slick too.
Yeah, there's some code issues I think they're dealing with, because the thing is that you don't necessarily need your whole roof to be a solar panel. You just need parts of it. And then you need matching glass. It's made from glass, right? Matching glass tiles for the rest of it. I think one of the issues that they're having is that if your house has a fire and the firefighter needs to go through the roof, how does he know which ones are live solar panels and not? Right.
Yeah.
So,
and I think they're really durable too. I mean, their website, they show them hitting it with a hammer and it not breaking. So that's a good point. Whether it poses any kind of fire safety, risks. Something else here, structural insulation panels. We talked about that. I thought this was pretty cool. This is, let's check this out. Bark Siding. This company is called Bark Clad. And again, we'll post the links up, but they were taking actual tree bark and making it into, they're from trees that are already cut. So they're not cutting trees just for the bark. They're saying that this product lasts 75 to 100 years without painting, sealant, or maintenance. There's no chemical runoffs. And the product is kiln dried to sterilize against fungus and pests, and no pesticides. So apparently when you kiln drive something, it never warps. So we'll post up, that's barkclad.com. And then we were kind of given reference to, you had said this new drywall by Certainteed. Basically this drywall is supposed to collect the VOCs. So kind of absorb VOCs. Or actually it says formaldehyde can pass through your paint and be converted into inert compound by the drywall. But this product is supposed to neutralize formaldehyde for better indoor air quality. And another one, we got some smart paint here. So guys, if you want to be smart, paint yourself with some super paint from Sherwin-Williams. This product actually has no VOCs and it's designed to absorb VOCs. We actually have a paint shortage here in the US too. I don't know if you're experiencing that, but maybe they don't have a shortage of that atmosphere purifying paint.
Yeah.
You can check it out. Something else that I thought was kind of neat. This is pretty cool. We talk about radical change and things, the way our houses may look here. I'd be okay with this. It's kind of a cool picture here for those of you that are listening and not watching. Green roofs. Green living roofs, life expectancy can be up to 40 years. And if energy efficiency reduces cool air loss by 70 to 90%, they say, reducing the demand for AC. Can also reduce noise from outside. A lot of the noise comes in from our roof. And water retention reduces some of the water runoff that we have. That's kind of cool, huh, Casey?
Yeah, we haven't done a green roof. I've had to repair a couple. The downside to green roofs, like, I think they're great. Like if you're in the city and you want an area to sit and you don't have a yard, green roof makes a lot of sense. It's an expensive feature, right? Because you still need to do a flat roof, and then your roof needs to be built in a way that it can support all of that growing medium, right? So 12 inches of topsoil, right? So you have added structural costs on top of that as well. And if you do end up with a roof leak, it's not fun to fix, which is what we've had to do for some clients before. So just make sure it's done right. I think that they're great, but it's always, approach with caution.
Definitely. It looks cool, but I can imagine, you have your gardener up on your roof, right? So you might have to make sure you have a landscaper that's not afraid of heights.
Yeah.
So, and lastly, we'll check out this picture. They say that shipping containers, that there's millions of containers around the world. And these containers are now being utilized in home architecture. And I was in Texas and saw this actually, where they took two of these and stacked them on top of each other. Pretty cool. They kind of stack them like building blocks. It's durable. You're reclaiming waste. These containers, we sell properties all the time, commercial properties, and they leave these things behind because they don't know what to do with them. They're inexpensive and stronger than average building blocks. So guys, if you want to build an addition on your house, maybe check out the shipping container options. You can actually go online and just search it, and you'll see some pretty cool structures. So you got any shipping container houses, Casey?
I had a lot of people ask us about it. We've looked into it. One thing to know about shipping containers is that they're not as square as you think they are, but they're also big thermal bridges, right? So it's steel, right? So unless you can somehow insulate either from the inside or wrap the outside of it, you're going to have an uncomfortable or cold spot, right? So that's the downside. I think in the right climate, in the right area, Panama, I don't know, they got lots of shipping containers, right?
Texas,
so,
probably.
Texas,
yeah,
there you
Texas,
go. Yeah, that probably makes sense. Or it could make sense. But once again, it's still like extreme heat is not a good thing either. So once again, approach, just make sure if you are going that route, that you're finding the right people to guide you. I feel like it's something that I'll eventually do just because I want to try it. And maybe I'll do like a shipping container coach home in the backyard one day or something. You know what I mean?
I think we should both do it, Casey.
Yeah.
I think we ought to have we should do it. We should vlog about it. We should build shipping container houses, or at least an addition with shipping containers, and see how it goes, so we can report back to everybody and reclaim some of those millions.
Might make sense right now at the cost of lumber. So
hey, amen to that, man. And that's why I know that's why Dan was asking about why he's considering those ICF walls, because I think his supplier's telling him how much his next house is going to be, the lumber package. And man, it is crazy.
Yeah. So ICF, yeah, if that's where the reason why he was asking is, we've actually had our ICF supplier saying that he's had a couple builders switch their homes to ICF because of the lumber price. Right. But it does take a little bit longer. It depends on the crew that you have doing it too. And once again, there's added work that you don't have to do with lumber, right? So it just, once again, make sure you got all the.
Yeah, if you want to change the window size at the last minute, you can always do it with lumber very easily. You're building those ICF walls. Ugh.
Yeah.
You're stuck. Well, Casey, man, look, this has been great. Very informative. You are amazing. And guys, I can't encourage you enough to check out Casey's YouTube channel. He has tons of videos on everything that he's talking about here with us tonight. Casey, thank you so much for being on our show.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
And guys, if you like what you're what you're hearing, this content, we appreciate if you would like, subscribe, or follow to whatever platform you're watching or listening to this podcast. And until next week, we'll see you then.